Let's talk about America. You know the version. You've seen it your entire life. The Statue of Liberty. Times Square at New Year's Eve when everyone's freezing and pretending they're not. Route 66 with a convertible and a sunset that looks like it was specifically commissioned by a tourism board. Grand Canyon selfies. Disney queues so long, they give you time to question every major life decision you've ever made and arrive at peace with none of them. That America is real. I'm not arguing with the postcards. But here's the thing about a country that spans 3.8 million square miles, holds 50 states, and contains 331 million people who were all dropped into wildly different circumstances. A country that size doesn't have one story. It has thousands, and most of them have never made the highlights reel. Today we're going into the gaps between the postcards. We found a Pennsylvania town where the ground has been on fire since 1962. Not a rumor, not a metaphor. The actual ground, on actual fire, for 63 years and counting. We found an Alaskan community of 214 people who decided that living inside one single building was a completely reasonable way to organize society. And honestly, after spending time with the idea, they might be onto something. We found a New York City island that's been abandoned for over 60 years, sitting in the East River in plain sight, and that most New Yorkers have no idea exists. We found a city that Mark Twain himself predicted would be the greatest in America. We'll discuss how that turned out. We found a town in Wyoming with a population of 1 man, 1 gas station, and enough desolate beauty to make you reconsider everything you thought you needed. We found a steel city built for 178,000 people, 30 miles from downtown Chicago, where the industry is gone, but the people are not. We found an American town you can only reach by driving through Canada twice. And we found a desert ghost town of 58 people who looked at every rational argument for leaving and collectively replied, "No, we're good actually. Also, who wants chili?" 8 places, 1 country, 0 reasons to be bored. This is the America nobody shows you. Fact 1. Centralia, Pennsylvania. There is a town in Pennsylvania where the ground has been on fire for over 6 decades, not metaphorically, not as local slang for things got tense. Literally, physically, geologically on fire. Right now as you watch this, the earth beneath what used to be Centralia, Pennsylvania is burning. Has been since 1962, and the extraordinary thing? It started with a mistake so mundane it's almost offensive. A landfill. Centralia in 1962 was a tight-knit coal mining community of about 1,000 people. The solution, as it was in 1962 for almost everything, was to set it on fire. Controlled burn. 2 days, they figured. Maybe 3. The fire reached an exposed seam of coal. Here's what they didn't fully appreciate. Coal seams don't end at the edge of the landfill. They run deep. They run laterally. Imagine coal that runs for miles underground, connected to oxygen through old mine shafts, with nothing between it and infinity. That's what they started. For years after, residents noticed things. The ground warmer than it should be. A strange smell. It did not resolve itself. In 1981, a 12-year-old boy named Todd Domboski was walking through his grandmother's backyard when the ground opened beneath his feet. A sinkhole, 4 feet wide, 60 feet deep. Temperature at the bottom, 350 degrees Fahrenheit. Todd grabbed a tree root on the way down. His cousin pulled him out. That was the moment the country paid attention. The government moved in. The US Postal Service revoked its zip code in 2002, which is the government's way of officially saying this place is no longer a place. The fire did not receive that memo. Today, you can walk the remnants of Centralia. 7 people still live there. 7. They fought the government's eminent domain claims in court and won the right to stay on their own land. Scientists estimate the underground fire could burn for another 250 years. Let that sit with you for a second. America doesn't talk about Centralia, maybe because it's easier not to, but it's there, and it's burning. Whittier, Alaska. There is a town in Alaska where 214 people live, work, shop for groceries, see the doctor, go to school, attend church, do their laundry, and collect their mail. All inside a single 14-story building. One building, the whole town. First, getting there is exactly one road in, the train goes through, then the cars go. Then it switches back. Miss your window? You wait for the next one. You emerge from the tunnel, and Whittier opens up in front of you. And there, sitting on the edge of it all like a concrete exclamation point that someone forgot to explain, is Baggage Towers. 14 stories, built by the US Army in 1956. Baggage Towers contains residential apartments, a post office, a grocery store, a laundromat, a medical clinic, a police station, a church, a community meeting room, and this is the detail that makes everything click, a school. Pre-K through grade 4. Inside the building. Down the hall. On paper, Whittier sounds oppressive, but people who've spoken to Whittier residents come away with a consistent finding: this community is extraordinarily close. When you literally live in the same building as everyone you know, the social contract changes. Whittier solved that problem accidentally, through concrete and geography. Also, and I cannot stress this enough, the view from Baggage Towers is an absolute crime. One building, 14 stories, 214 people, and a view that most of the country is not getting. Fact 3, North Brother Island, New York. There is an island in New York City that has been completely abandoned for over 60 years. It is not remote. It is not hidden. North Brother Island, 20 acres, completely off limits to the public. The island began operating as a quarantine hospital in 1885. Then, June 15th, 1904, the steamship General Slocum caught fire in the East River. Over 1,000 people died. It remains the deadliest disaster in New York City history. Almost nobody in America knows this happened. 3 years later, in 1907, the island's most infamous resident arrived. Her name was Mary Mallon. You probably know her differently: Typhoid Mary. Mary Mallon was an Irish-American cook who became the first person in the United States identified as an asymptomatic carrier of typhoid fever. She was forcibly brought to North Brother Island and confined to a small cottage in quarantine. She lived there until she died in 1938. For nearly 3 decades, North Brother Island was her world. Everyone left. The gates were locked, and nature, which has never once cared about human schedules, moved back in. Today, North Brother Island is a bird sanctuary. Nature is doing what it always does to things humans build and then abandon. It is taking it back, slowly, completely, without apology. Fact 4. Cairo, Illinois. In the 19th century, some of the most brilliant and influential people in America looked at a small city in southern Illinois and said collectively, that right there is going to be the greatest city in America. Not Chicago, not New York, not St. Louis. Cairo, Illinois First, it's pronounced Cairo, not like Egypt, like Cairo. Why were the smartest people in 19th century America betting everything on this place? Geography. Pure, undeniable, once-in-a-continent geography. Cairo sits at the precise confluence of the Mississippi River and the Ohio River. Charles Dickens visited in 1842. Mark Twain used Cairo as the pivotal turning point location in Huckleberry Finn. At its peak in the early 20th century, Cairo had grand Victorian mansions, luxury hotels, and more millionaires per capita than cities 10 times its size. It had a future that seemed not just likely, but inevitable. Inevitability, it turns out, is not a guarantee. The railroads changed everything. Racial violence and systemic disinvestment throughout the 20th century hollowed out the tax base. The population that once topped 15,000 is now under 1,000. But here's what makes Cairo genuinely extraordinary. Everything they built is still there. Walking through Cairo is one of the most emotionally complicated experiences in American travel, because it's not just a town in decline, it's a monument to ambition. Mark Twain thought Cairo was going to be everything. He wasn't wrong about what it had, he just didn't know what was coming. Neither did anyone. Fact 5. Buford, Wyoming. Let me give you the shortest population count in the history of American civic records. 1. Buford, Wyoming. Population, 1 human being. Legally a town, has a zip code, has a gas station. For over 20 years, that person was Don Salmons. When Don Salmons finally decided to sell, he sold everything. The gas station, the land, the buildings, the town, all of it. It sold for $900,000. The buyer, a Vietnamese businessman named Pham Dinh Nguyen, who flew from Vietnam to bid on and win an entire American town. He renamed it Town Buford. He used it as a marketing platform for his Vietnamese coffee brand. I cannot make this up. One person chose to live here alone for decades, and when he left, the whole world wanted in. Fact 6. Gary, Indiana. 30 miles from downtown Chicago, there is a city with a skyline, a real one, buildings, architecture, scale. Almost nobody lives there anymore. Gary, Indiana was not a happy accident. It was a plan. In 1906, US Steel looked at the southern shore of Lake Michigan and said, "We need a city." At its peak in the mid-20th century, Gary had 178,000 residents. You already know where this is going. When American steel collapsed in the 1970s and 80s, Gary collapsed with it. What remained is staggering. City Methodist Church, built 1926. Stone arches framing clouds and tree canopy where a ceiling used to be. Union Station, Romanesque, built for a city that was going places, still stands. Empty. And here's the part that the ruined photographers miss. Gary still has people. Families who stayed when staying was hard. Gary is not a ghost town. It is a city in the middle of the hardest kind of reinvention. The steel empire is over. The story is very much still happening. Fact 7. Point Roberts, Washington. There is a community of approximately 1,300 people in Washington state who, if they want to drive to the nearest American city, must: Step 1. Cross into Canada. Step 2. Drive through British Columbia for about 25 miles. Step 3. Cross back into the United States. Step 4. Show their passport. Both times. Welcome to Point Roberts, Washington, an American exclave that exists because two countries drew a line on a map in 1846, and neither of them checked what the line was going to do to a small peninsula jutting into the Strait of Georgia. The result? Point Roberts. American soil. American laws, American flag, American zip code, American post office, completely encircled by water and Canada. This is legally and geographically America. It just happens to be surrounded by Canada. The community that lives there has adapted in ways that reveal genuine human creativity. Then, March 2020, the US-Canada border closed. For the first time in living memory, the border wasn't just inconvenient, it was sealed. American citizens on American soil could not leave. They were stranded, on their own land, by their own border. The 49th parallel is just a line on a map. In Point Roberts, that line has a zip code. Fact 8, Terlingua, Texas. The last one, and in some ways, the best one. Deep in the Chihuahuan Desert of West Texas, so far from the nearest major city that the drive from El Paso takes 3.5 hours, and from Austin takes 6, there is a ghost town. And the ghost town is throwing a party. Terlingua, Texas. Population 58. Permanent residents, actual human beings who chose this. The nearest hospital is an hour's drive. The nearest Walmart, and I use this as a unit of civilizational measurement, is in Alpine, 78 miles north. The landscape around Terlingua is the Chihuahuan Desert in full expression. Dramatic, spare, merciless, and so beautiful at golden hour that it makes you want to apologize for every ugly building you've ever been in. In the 1880s, mercury ore, cinnabar, was discovered in the Big Bend region. The Chisos Mining Company moved in. A town grew, adobe houses, a company store, a school, hundreds of workers and their families living and working in the desert because the ore was there and the ore was valuable. At peak operation, around 2,000 people called Terlingua home. The mines shut down in 1944. The ore was gone. The company left overnight. The people dispersed. The desert, which had been waiting with the patience that only deserts have, began the slow process of reclaiming what had been built. Adobe, which is essentially compressed earth, melts back into the ground with remarkable efficiency when nobody is maintaining it. Within years, Terlingua was a ghost town in the classical sense. Empty, quiet, the wind moving through structures that no longer had owners. Then, something happened that nobody predicted. In 1967, a group of food writers and journalists staged a chili cook-off in Terlingua. It was a publicity stunt, a way to definitively settle a debate about whose chili recipe was superior. They expected it to be a one-time event, a bit of fun, a good story. The Terlingua International Chili Championship is now, 6 decades later, one of the most beloved food events in America. Thousands of people travel to a desert ghost town of 58 permanent residents every November to camp, compete, and eat chili under stars that, at this latitude and altitude, with zero light pollution in any direction, are not so much visible as overwhelming. And with the cook-off came something else. Artists who needed space, writers who needed quiet, astronomers who needed that sky. Off-grid enthusiasts who looked at ruined adobe walls in the middle of the Chihuahuan Desert and thought specifically and sincerely, this is where I belong. Terlingua today is a functioning ghost town. And that phrase contains a genuine contradiction that Terlingua resolves by simply refusing to acknowledge it. The ruins are part of the landscape, not a museum exhibit. The cemetery from the mining era, decorated with handmade crosses, plastic flowers from the dollar store, and the occasional bottle of whiskey left by a mourner who clearly understood the cultural assignment, is a genuine social gathering spot on weekend evenings. People sit among the graves and watch the sun go down over the desert and talk. The Starlight Theater, the local bar and restaurant, operates in a building that doesn't have a complete roof. It doesn't need one. The ceiling is the sky. On a clear night, which in Terlingua is most nights, that ceiling is extraordinary. And the 58 permanent residents who chose this, remember, chose it deliberately, with full knowledge of where the nearest hospital was, live among the ruins of the town that came before them, in a community that makes no conventional sense and works completely. Terlingua shouldn't exist. By every rational metric of modern American life, access, infrastructure, economy, proximity to anything, it has no business being a functioning community. It is one of the most alive places in this country. 58 people looked at a ghost town in the desert and decided it wasn't finished. They were right. Here's what I want you to take from all of this. Not just the locations, not just the history, though both are extraordinary. America tells a very specific story about itself. The highlights, the monuments, the carefully curated greatest hits version of a country that is, in reality, enormous and messy and strange and contradictory and full of things that don't fit the frame. The complete version of this country has fires that nobody put out, and islands that nobody talks about, and cities that were going to be everything and became something else entirely, and 58 people in the desert who are correct that you don't actually need a roof if the sky is good enough. The complete version is weirder. It's harder. It's more human. And it is, in every way that matters, more interesting than the version you've been sold. And it's everywhere. You just have to know where to look. If that's the kind of looking you want to do, this is your channel. Subscribe. Hit the bell so you know the moment the next one drops. And if this video gave you something, a fact you didn't know, a place you now need to visit, or just the feeling that the world is bigger and stranger and better than the algorithm usually suggests, share it. That's how we find more people like you. That's how this community gets built. There is so much more out there that nobody is showing you. We're going to find it. See you on the next one.